Hello, welcome back to Black Book Stacks. I am Hoshonda Sanders, your host. Thank you so much for your likes, shares, and subscribes. I hope that March has found you well. I have been writing up a storm, but I wanted to stop in and talk about some of my favorite reads so far this spring-ish, almost spring. And one of them is Shine Bright by Danielle Smith, a very personal history of Black women in pop. Oh my gosh, I memorized it. I hadn't read it in a little while. I want you to take a really good look at this beautiful cover because it is incredible. So I have a story about Danielle Smith. So I don't even remember when I first became aware of her in the world. I think I might have known that she was an editor or the first Black woman editor of Vibe, like in the 90s. Like I think I knew of her name then because I was obsessed with Vibe. I want to say I first saw it in 1992, 1993. It might have been 1993. I was walking through Port Authority on my way to a bus. I very viscerally remember seeing fine ass Tretch from Naughty by Nature, because then he was like, this is like the Shoop days, right, where he was like super muscular, he had those crazy braids, but like those were in then. Gosh, what is the name of that movie? Jacob's Lyric, I guess, was Jason's Lyric, excuse me, was like in theaters, and he was in it, and like Lisa Nicole Carson was in it. Like it just was a thing, like a whole thing. And I remember it very viscerally because it had a white background, and like he's like beautiful. He has this beautiful dark skin, but like his muscles were rippling, and he's like kind of standing like this. Anyway, I saw it, and so there was like a white background. You know, he's like, you know, chiseled, beautiful, whatever, like oiled. And then there's like Vibe written in like red letters or something like that, and I was like, what is that? I was like a huge magazine nerd in addition to loving books, but like obviously, like, yeah, I mean, well, not obviously, I just couldn't afford anything. So all my books I got from the library, but you couldn't really take out magazines from the library like that. So like if I had an allowance, like when I was working over the summer, I would save up my little pennies, my little coins, and then I'd go buy a magazine. And before I knew it, I had like stacks of them because I was like obsessed. You know, this is the pre-internet era, so I couldn't just like go online and read about my favorite artists. Like this was the way that you got information about this, and like Video Music Box, which I just watched a documentary for that, which if you haven't watched it, it's on Showtime. It's amazing. Anyway, so that was how you found out about like the artists who were hip, and like there were these amazing profiles. There were all these incredible writers like Greg Tate and Karen Good Marable, and like all of these incredible Joan Morgan, like these incredible writers at that time were just like on it every month. And there's this Black woman who comes from out of nowhere, who like is on the masthead, and I'm like, who is Danielle Smith? Okay, so that's like in the early 90s, and I'm like a teenager. So fast forward to when I start my newspaper career, and Danielle Smith is from the Bay, it turns out, and like is there writing novels. And I happen to be a feature writer at the San Francisco Chronicle, which is bananas on several levels, but like, you know, whatever, that's where I'm at. And anyway, so I write about her debut novel, More Like Wrestling, which is fantastic. You know, a couple years later, she does a follow-up, Bliss. I think I write about that too. And, you know, water under bridge, like no big deal. Like, love to support Black women writing at all times, whenever I can. She's lovely to interview and talk to. It's amazing. It's fine. That's probably like 2003, 2004-ish, around that time. So years later, I'm back in New York. I get invited to something. Danielle Smith is also invited to that something, and I see her in person. And I feel like I am seeing like Diana Ross or somebody. First of all, what you have to know about Danielle, if you have not experienced her presence in any way, like maybe you've seen her on a show. She's been on a show with her husband, Elliot Wilson, who's also a badass in journalism, particularly like music journalism. So like they're this power couple. I think they've been on like TV shows and stuff together, and they've done podcasts and stuff together. She has her own amazing podcast called Black Girl Soundbook. Anyway, all of this aside, I see Danielle Smith and I'm like, oh my God, it's Danielle Smith. I've never actually interviewed or talked to her before. Like, we don't have a whole ass relationship. So anyway, like, it's amazing to see her and like be in her presence, and also to be invited to something that she's invited to. But then I find out that she is actually going to write this amazing book about Black women in pop. I feel like that was like 3 or 4 years ago. I've been waiting for this book ever since. So that's a really long way of telling you, one, my connection to Danielle, but also like I'm trying to give you a sense of like how dynamic and multifaceted and multi-hyphenate she is, because she really brings that to the book. So what you need to know about Danielle is that like she is herself in all genres, forums, places. So she is the person. I don't want to call her an elder. She's older than me, but like she's not there yet, right? Like she's not like Toni Morrison status. I'm thinking in terms of like, you know, the gravitas and the like, you have many decades on you, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like she's not at that status yet. She's not quite like auntie status, not for me, because I'm not that much younger than her, right? But like she's just this like saucy, like tell it like it is, like I've been there, we got this, I got you, like I know, like let me just name it, you know what I mean? And she just does it with so much swag that like I am always like all exclamation points, all caps for Danielle Smith. So like I cannot, if you are looking for an unbiased approach to shine bright in anything that Danielle Smith produces, you will never get that from me. I'm always gonna fangirl. But this particular book is amazing because she talks about her own personal trajectory from, you know, being this kid in Los Angeles and the Bay with her sister and her mom, her stepfather, who she sort of hates, and they have this terrible kind of relationship to each other. But she weaves that personal story in with her recounting of people like Leontyne Price, Dionne Warwick, and Cissy Houston before we get to her actually sitting with Whitney Houston and interviewing Whitney Houston, who actually turns out to be sort of antagonistic toward her, which is wild, but so like incredible to like, one, realize that like Leontyne Price, Dionne Warwick are related to Cissy Houston, and they basically like set the stage for Whitney, which I guess people don't even really know or think about. But there were several amazing things and encounters that Danielle has being in the music world as she works her way up that involve Whitney Houston. One of them is this incredible scene that like, it's very cinematic. I mean, if this is adapted into some sort of movie, I would not be surprised. But basically, like, Danielle is sitting with Gerald and Eddie Levert at this event where Don King also happens to be. I did not know that Don King was a gangster. Like, why am I surprised? Like, he was a boxing promoter. That's all I knew about Don King, and he had crazy hair. But apparently, he like shot a man, did no jail time, according to Danielle Smith, who I absolutely believe every word she says. And the reason that's important is because Whitney Houston is hugging Don King, and high-ass Bobby Brown is somewhere close by, like, staring at them like he's about to jump in. And, like, Gerald and Eddie Levert have to, like, get to the scene to, like, keep Bobby Brown from basically getting murdered for, like, overreacting to the long hug that Don King and Whitney Houston are having. And, like, the way that Danielle puts it is that, like, Don King is the wrong Negro. Like Bobby Brown doesn't know. It's incredible. Anyway, it cracked me up. It like warmed my soul. And then I was like, just like still trying to get over that. And then when Danielle finally like kind of hustles to get this interview with Whitney Houston, they have this conversation because Danielle's going through divorce from her first marriage and trying to like be an ambitious, successful Black woman, which, you know, is what she has in common with all of the incredible like Black women in pop that she talks about in the book, including Janet Jackson and Rihanna and Lena Horne, who dated Joe Louis, who like has this incredible quote about how like some men just have in them that they want to take out the light of a woman who has this radiance, right? And so, of course, you think about someone like Rihanna with Chris Brown, which, you know, is captured in the book, but you also think about the weird relationship that Janet Jackson has to Michael Jackson, which is also elaborated in the book, and you know, just the other things that have happened in Janet Jackson's career that show you how people tried to dim her light, and that's just a thing, and it's been persistent, you know, and like Danielle does a really good job of showing the parallels between that and what happened in her personal journey. Anyway, so Danielle gets this interview with Whitney. They have one conversation. Danielle shares a little bit about her personal experience, and then in the follow-up, and of course, like Robin Crawford is around, right? So like knowing what we know now about her position in Whitney's life is like all the more ironic. But Whitney, the next time Danielle sees her, goes, "I have my man, what about you?" Which is like, oh shoot, like like what? But like that's how that part of the book ends, and then we go on to something else, right? It's like she doesn't dwell on it. She just, like, I think a really great writer, journalist, she just like drops the mic and lets you like figure it out. So anyway, in addition to learning a lot of really good tea and juicy details about the contributions of Black women in pop and popular culture, which is really a metaphor or an example of like how core they have been to American culture, and so a way of talking about how they've contributed to American culture. What's so valuable to me about this book is a reminder that of the importance of this work that I do, that we do, that Danielle does, that all of the writers that I try to uplift do, particularly as it relates to Black women. So there's this passage that I really love. At the end, there's an outro instead of an afterword or postscript, which I love. This is so Danielle. I love her. She doesn't want to stop writing the book, and she says, because if we stop, we will be forgotten. That is the fear, and it's not an irrational fear, because so many Black women and so much of Black women's work is undervalued and strategically unremembered. We cannot sit quietly while everyone dresses like us and sings like us and writes like us and just kinds of steals us from ourselves. That's the part that makes us tired. But what's even more heartbreaking than that is the thought that people may not truly know us or the details of our lives. What if no one ever gets us right? What if our spirits and stories are never truly known? It could so easily be that we, except for our songs, our art, our children, were never here at all. So deep, so amazing, so powerful. Anyway, such a gift. Coming out April 19th. So you only have a few more weeks to wait, but this is definitely worth pre-ordering. Danielle Smith, Shine Bright. She's the best. If you are still on Spotify, I know a lot of people have abandoned ship just when I returned to it after many years of not really messing with it. But I did that just to hear Black Girl Songbook, which is totally worth it. Black Girl Songbook, if podcasts are your thing, is like a joy. But yeah, I'll link to Danielle's other stuff in the comments, her other books and her site, and you can see her glory for yourself. I'm sure you'll be a fan just like I am. And with that, I will sign off. Happy reading. I will see you again. I'm not sure when, but until then, happy reading, and thanks so much for your support of the channel.